Rev, I know you were not just part of this meeting with President-elect Biden yesterday, but behind organizing it. And I do want to get to the confirmation process, but I just want to hear from you. Are you guys still synced up? How was the meeting? Was it broader than cabinet picks? What did you guys talk about, and how do you feel about it?
I think that we talked about the broad agenda and vision that we wanted to see that President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris was going to project in terms of bringing this country back to a level of sanity in terms of how we deal with the budgetary concerns, the economic disparities, the black-white wealth gap we talked about. We talked about vision, criminal justice, and voting. We talked a long time about it. It was supposed to be an hour meeting. It went an hour and 50 minutes. And then the people that would be in the cabinet would come out of the vision rather than trying to have those people that are being selected be part of some political pressure to get my friend or my buddy or my whatever in position. They have to fit within the vision. And I think that that is the spirit that we brought to the meeting. And I think the president-elect was very receptive to that and very open. As I said, the meeting went 50 minutes over. At times, he was very passionate and saying what he believed. Mm-hmm. And we all understand that we are adults and we've been in this and we're not going to get all we want. But there's some things that are non-negotiable, and we made that very clear. And there's some things I think he will say he's not going to do. But it's important that he starts talking to every silo in this country, unlike the present occupant of the White House.
Rev, I mean, that's sort of the nature of my questioning. I mean, you and I have had so many conversations, and many of them on some of the darkest days of Trump's presidency. The Bleep Hole Country Day, I think, was a Friday when you were with us, and so many of his most flagrantly racist low points. What is the sort of balance of relief and then not letting this moment pass you by? And how does it play into what you want to see at the Department of Justice, where so much of this action, I think, and policy takes place?
The relief is that I think that probably the most bigoted and racist presidency in my lifetime is over. Now, just because I get through a storm does not mean the sun came out. It just means it stopped raining. And I think all of us needs to make sure that we help move these clouds back to get some sunshine in. And that's where we had entered these conversations with former Vice President Biden, President-elect Biden. You must remember, though, when we dealt with some of this issue, Vice President Biden, who was vice president at the time, was in the room. So as I reminded him, when we went through Trayvon Martin and Eric Garner and all, he was in the meetings I was at when President Obama and him started the policing kind of commissions to look at this and met with young activists and met with those of us from civil rights group. So in many ways, I've been at that table with him before when he was the co-pilot. Yesterday, he's the pilot, and Vice President-elect Harris is the co-pilot. So they have experience in this, and they need to bring people with experience. The Justice Department, I prefer a black attorney general with a background in dealing with civil rights and voting rights. The least he could do, whoever it is, must be
Who's
somebody.
Who's that? Name names, Rev. Who would you like to see there?
I think that you have everyone from a Tony West, who was number 3 in Justice, has experience. I think Deval Patrick has experience. I think others that have been mentioned have experience. Some may have prestige but don't have experience. We're in the era of George Floyd. We have a police shooting, a law enforcement shooting in Columbus, Ohio going on right now. We do not need someone that may be prestigious but have to do on-the-job training around police reform, particularly when Mr. Biden was part of helping to create a police review commission under the administration of Obama-Biden.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.